In 2022, a painting created entirely by artificial intelligence won first place at the Colorado State Fair Fine Arts Competition. The human who entered it spent no time painting, no time sketching, and no time mixing colors. He typed a few words into a computer, and walked away with a blue ribbon. The professional artists who competed against him were furious. And that moment, right there, was the starting pistol for one of the most chaotic debates the creative world has ever seen. Here is what this video covers. We are going to walk through exactly how AI art tools work, where they came from, which industries are already being reshaped, and what the data is actually telling us about jobs, revenue, and creative futures. And there is one finding buried in recent economic research that completely flips the common narrative on its head. Most people assume AI is simply replacing artists. But the reality is stranger, more complicated, and in some ways more alarming than that simple story. Stay with us. To understand where we are today, you have to go back further than most people realize. The idea of machines creating art is not new. In the 1960s, a computer scientist named Harold Cohen built a program called Aaron that could generate original drawings. It ran for decades. But Aaron was rule-based. It followed instructions. It did not learn. What changed everything was a technique called deep learning, specifically a category of models known as generative adversarial networks, or GANs, introduced in 2014 by researcher Ian Goodfellow. A GAN pits two neural networks against each other. One generates images. The other critiques them. Through millions of rounds of competition, the system learns to produce increasingly convincing results. That was the foundation. But GANs were just the beginning. The real explosion came with diffusion models. Tools like DALL-E, Midjourney, and Stable Diffusion use a different approach. They are trained on billions of images scraped from the internet, learning the statistical relationships between visual elements and language. When you type a prompt, the model works backward from noise, gradually refining pixels until something coherent and often stunning emerges. By late 2022, these tools were available to ordinary people with no technical background. The barrier to creating professional-looking visual art dropped to nearly zero overnight. The numbers from that period tell the story clearly. Midjourney launched its public beta in July 2022. Within a year, it had more than 15 million registered users. Stable Diffusion was downloaded millions of times in its first week of release. Adobe, one of the most established names in creative software, launched its own AI image generator called Firefly in 2023 and reported over 1 billion generated images within its first 3 months. The speed of adoption was unlike anything the software industry had seen in a generation. But here is what nobody talks about when they list those impressive numbers. The people doing most of the generating are not replacing professional artists in the way everyone imagined. Research from the University of Pennsylvania published in 2023 found that the occupations most exposed to large language and image models were not low-skill jobs. They were high-skill, high-wage creative and analytical positions. Graphic designers, illustrators, concept artists, and photographers are facing direct substitution pressure. Meanwhile, manual labor remains largely untouched. The disruption is hitting the professional middle class of the creative economy hardest. Stock image platforms offer one of the clearest windows into this disruption. Getty Images reported a significant decline in contributor earnings as AI-generated images flooded competing platforms. Shutterstock, responding to pressure, announced a partnership with OpenAI while simultaneously launching a fund to compensate artists whose work had been used in training data. Adobe Stock began accepting AI-generated images under strict disclosure rules. The entire stock photography business model, which employed hundreds of thousands of independent creators worldwide, was destabilized within roughly 18 months of these tools going mainstream. The entertainment and advertising industries are feeling the same pressure. A 2023 survey by the Concept Art Association found that 63% of concept artists reported losing work directly to AI-generated alternatives in the prior year. Major film studios and game developers began quietly cutting illustration and concept art budgets. One anonymous game studio director told an industry publication that they had reduced their outsourced concept art spending by 40% after integrating AI generation tools into their pre-production pipeline. These are not hypothetical future disruptions. They are documented economic events happening right now. So what does this mean for working artists? The answer depends enormously on who you are and what you create. Some artists have adapted aggressively. They use AI tools to accelerate their own workflows, generating rough compositions or color studies they then refine manually. Photographers have begun using AI upscaling and editing tools to dramatically increase their output. Animators are using AI-assisted frame interpolation to reduce labor-intensive in-between work. For artists with established reputations, recognizable styles, and direct client relationships, AI is frequently acting as a productivity multiplier rather than a replacement. But for entry-level and mid-tier commercial artists, the situation is more difficult. These are the illustrators who relied on stock platforms for passive income, the designers who built careers doing straightforward branding work for small businesses, and the artists who served as visual research assistants at studios. Those roles are shrinking. And here is the painful irony that almost nobody in the mainstream conversation acknowledges. The AI systems doing the replacing were trained on the work of those exact same artists without their permission and without compensation. The legal battles over this are only beginning. Lawsuits filed in 2023 by artists including Kelly McKernan, Carla Ortiz, and others against Stability AI, Midjourney, and DeviantArt alleged copyright infringement on a massive scale. The cases argue that training AI on copyrighted images without consent or payment constitutes infringement. The legal outcome remains uncertain, but these cases are pushing courts into genuinely new territory. How copyright law applies to training data is one of the most consequential unresolved legal questions of this decade, and whatever courts decide will shape not just the art world but the entire AI industry. Meanwhile, the creative industries are scrambling to establish standards. The Graphic Artists Guild has published position statements demanding compensation frameworks. The Writers Guild of America, in its historic 2023 strike, secured contractual protections against AI replacing human writers. Screen Actors Guild fought similar battles over digital likenesses. These labor actions represent creative workers recognizing that unless they establish legal and contractual protections now, the window to do so may close. History shows that industries rarely reverse automation once it becomes entrenched. What does the near future actually look like based on current trajectories? Goldman Sachs published a widely cited report estimating that AI could expose 300 million full-time jobs globally to automation. Within specifically creative fields, McKinsey research projects that generative AI could automate 20 to 30% of current creative work tasks within the next decade. But those same projections acknowledge significant uncertainty. New creative roles are also emerging. AI prompt engineering, model fine-tuning, and AI art direction are genuine skill sets employers are beginning to hire for. The question is whether these new roles will appear fast enough and at sufficient scale to absorb displaced workers. The most honest assessment is that the creative economy is being restructured rather than destroyed. The total amount of visual content being produced is increasing dramatically. Demand for images, videos, and graphics has never been higher. But the proportion of that content requiring skilled human labor is falling. The result is more content and fewer well-paying creative jobs producing it. That is a fundamentally different economic structure than what existed before, and it will require fundamentally different responses from artists, educators, policymakers, and platforms alike. The Colorado State Fair controversy feels almost quaint now, looking back. A judge awarded a prize to an AI image and sparked outrage. Today, billions of AI images are generated every month with barely a second thought from the general public. The normalization happened with extraordinary speed. For the creative industries, that speed is precisely the problem. There was no gradual adjustment period, no slow recalibration. The disruption arrived at a pace that left institutions, legal systems, and individual livelihood scrambling to respond. Before you go, if you learned something valuable today, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to Trend Now Daily for a brand new video every single day. We will see you in the next one.